Hi, my name is Rachel, and today we're talking about another badly behaving author. In today's episode, we're actually talking about an author who made me very salty because I bought her book, and as I was doing like my notes for the review, a shitstorm happened on Twitter in which the author was outed as kind of a dick. I read this book back in 2020. The author is Nadya Okamoto, and the book is Period Power. I actually still have it in a box of books that is labeled I don't know what to do with you. I had written in notes for a review. I had started. Then the scandal happened. More on that in a second. Okamoto started a Portland-based nonprofit when she was a teen. The nonprofit was called Period. After experiencing long bus routes home and to school in 2014, she started to speak with women who were without housing and who were struggling to find menstrual products. She started visiting homeless shelters, pushing them to provide menstrual products, and then she founded Period, which is a nonprofit aimed at educating about period equity and getting period products to those in need. As of 2018, it had revenues of like $400,000. Nadya got a ton of recognition. She was named on Teen Vogue's 21 Under 21, Forbes list of 30 Under 30, and was Glamour's Woman of the Year. So I'm reading her book, and I thought it was kind of young sounding, but it was really exciting to see somebody so excited about doing things for the period equity movement and educating. And then I find out about another activist in the menstrual justice movement came forward to talk about her experience with Nadya. Ileri Jaiyeoba wrote a piece in Medium called A Call for Accountability, Anti-Blackness in the Menstrual Justice Space. Initially, Ileri actually tweeted at Nadya. Nadya had posted this tweet that says, "This is on all of us," after the murder of George Floyd by police. That this is on all of us. Use your platform to speak out. Take action beyond social media. Sign petition. Donate to bail funds. Here's a city-by-city list of bail funds, yada yada, and posted a picture that was art created by her own sister. Ileri retweeted this saying, "Remember when you tried to dissolve my organization and exploited my intellectual labor as well as other Black women and women of color? You also framed a homeless experience and dropped it once you got big. Open your pockets from those speaking engagements and stop using this as a way to promote your sister's art." This was 2 years after Nadya's book, Period Power, a manifesto of the menstrual movement. There's so many M's, I'm sorry, I had to look at it. 2 years after her book came out, Nadya had gone through years of being this very prominent person in the menstrual justice movement, and it turned out that she had silenced women of color working in the same space, took credit for their work, plagiarized, and finally they started speaking out. In Ileri's piece for Medium, she says, "My story with Nadya starts in 2015. I was 16, participating in a program empowering girls to start projects in their community. I had started Code Red Co., a collective and co-powering organization, breaking the period taboo and providing space for menstruators and their period wellness through literacy, aid, and advocacy. I was young and passionate about collaborating and building a partnership with established feminist entrepreneurism such as Nadya Okamoto. Nadya encouraged me to sign up as a chapter in order to initiate the partnership, to which I insisted the base of our collaboration should be through partnership, not a chapter to her organization. She convinced me that all corporate partners signed up and operated in their chapter model to keep up to date with their networks and tracking of care packages. I was inspired by her story and trusted her word, and I signed up to be a chapter for her, not realizing the manipulation tactic Okamoto had used in an attempt to dissolve my organization. She had told me at first that I would have complete freedom over my organization, but then soon told me that there was a clause in the contract for chapters which made it so my organization was not able to open up a bank account or register independently. It soon became very clear that Nadya had over the years intentionally exploited my intellectual labor and misinformed eagerness in an attempt to prevent the future of my organization to pursue a nonprofit status by relegating it as a chapter of Period. Despite misleading and coercing me into believing that signing on as a chapter was solely based on a partnership, Nadya accused my organization of mimicking Period's work, condescendingly stated that she was touched by it but wasn't going to stand for my organization's development with the same model. This situation is only a glimpse at Nadya Okamoto's constant fight to undermine my work and my organization's work. Unfortunately and unsurprisingly, unsurprisingly, Nadia's history of trying to dissolve grassroots and community organizations by manipulating and exploiting the trust of people to unknowingly work for and benefit solely her is not unique. Many organizations' founders have come forward on Twitter to say that Nadya and Period have tried to dissolve their organizations. Corporate nonprofits like Period, who monopolize community-based work, are a huge problem when bullying smaller organizations that are doing meaningful work and serving the community into dissolving. I am bringing this to public attention because a huge flaw in the nonprofit industrial complex is that it is founded and bolstered on the backs of individuals, such as Nadya, who are willing to exploit and feign the hardship and trust of others for clout, sympathy, credibility, and material benefit. After Ileri had called out Nadya on Twitter on June 4th, other organizers came forward, people who have also worked in the period equity movement, the period justice movement, including Chelsea Von Chaz and Jennifer Weiss-Wolf, whose book I ended up reading right after reading Nadya's, because Jennifer said, I can speak directly to instances of verbatim plagiarism as well as ownership claiming, directly and by inference, for policy frames, genesis, etc. And I can confirm that reading them back to back, I noticed things that were directly lifted out of Jennifer's book and placed into Nadya's book. Sometimes she would give credit to Jennifer, sometimes she wouldn't. It was verbatim plagiarism. Jennifer's book is Periods Gone Public. It was definitely written before Nadya's book was. It's an excellent book. I highly recommend it. I have done a full review. I'll link it down below if you're interested. It was also pointed out on Twitter that even Nadya's book cover was plagiarized. In Ileri's piece on Medium, she also talks about how Nadya has used her previous homelessness to boost her platform, and people started criticizing this because it turned out that Nadya was not homeless, as in completely without a house, but she ended up saying that she was legally homeless, which she defines as her family did not have a home and they lived with other people. She used this as part of her platform to start Period and in getting into Harvard and running for municipal office in 2017. Ileri shows tweets of people that have worked for Nadya, one of which says, in 2017, Nadya Okamoto convinced me and others on the importance of her missions, period, and youth in government, and after experiencing firsthand how little these issues will matter to her, I can say she is not a good person. She exploits the ambition of people who care about issues. In 2017, eager to get involved, I campaigned for Nadya Okamoto. I apologize for doing so without thinking about her faux activism and her misrepresentation of her past. I now understand why her votes came from MIT, where nobody knew her, instead of Harvard. Nadya did attend Harvard. Ileri says, her obsession with being the first is what erases the work of those who paved the path towards the menstrual rights movement and an end towards period poverty. The problem and fundamental inconsistency with these notions was that these overarching messages and slogans were not met with a similar interest in investing and supporting her campaign team or the Cambridge community. Much like her social media and misleading and falsified childhood stories of hardship, Nadya's unsuccessful city council campaign was rooted in her willingness to forego honesty in order to achieve status and sympathy. And the line that really sits with me in this piece from Ileri is where she says, putting competition above collaboration, her work has become the antithesis of activist work. Though she works hard, she is hardly working for others. And Ileri went ahead and made a list and said individuals impacted have set up a list of demands for both Nadya Okamoto and Period to make moving forward. Nadya Okamoto stepping down from her advocacy lead role in Period, having a black menstruator replace the executive director of Period or give chapters the option of quitting Period and becoming their own organizations, posting a public apology to the Cambridge Harvard community as well as those in the Period space for the harm she has caused, awards and articles that have Nadya Okamoto as homeless being corrected and redone, complete financial transparency about brand deals, speaking engagements, and committing to redistribution of money into mutual aid funds and grassroots organizers in the menstrual space. Completely erase any narrative of being the first ones to do anything, especially when it comes to National Period Day and efforts to end the tampon tax. Black and brown led organizations receiving access to Period's resources such as menstrual products, etc. I'm going to leave Ileri's Medium piece linked down below. There are a ton of black led organizations that she lists that are working in the period equity space, and I think that's super important. So I'm going to leave a link to her in the first thing in the description box down below. I hope that you'll go read it. I didn't read all of it here just for the sake of time, but there are a whole list, I'll show it here, of organizations that you can go support on social media, you can donate to. This is hugely important. I want to do more on my space here talking about periods, and I'm gonna start making more videos about that again this year. I did take a break for reasons that I'm not going to talk about here from talking about periods, but I plan to get back into it, and I think that part of that is to uplift these organizations that are led by women of color. So please go check them out and support them on social media, and if you can, donate. Because of all of this gaining traction, Nadya did post an apology. This is still on her Twitter as of me filming this. It's from June 8th, 2020. It says, over the last week I've heard stories of people who have felt muted by my own actions or periods programs. I humbly apologize for ever causing experiences of suppression and recognize that I have more work to do to ensure this never happens again. Here's a more full response. I want to first express that I honor and validate those experiences and understand that while I have never meant to make anyone feel silenced, I absolutely have work to do to ensure this never happens again. In the early years of Period, we had organizational policies in place to only share training toolkits and donate period products to our rapidly growing chapter network rather than to outside organizations. This was due to our low inventory at the time and our lack of financial resources to freely cover shipping costs to so many partners. In the process, we have encouraged and offered other organizations to become chapters. In instances where we felt our period model with toolkits and chapter networks were being replicated by external organizations, we asked them to choose fully being a chapter and potentially disbanding, or stop being a chapter and open up opportunities to partner as separate organizations. I totally understand how offering this choice and how these practices might have seemed like we were asking other orgs to dissolve, but that was not my or the organization's intention. And I am truly sorry to anyone who has ever felt pressured by me or our policies to disband. Earlier this year, I stepped down from the role of Executive Director of Period and now work specifically on advocacy campaigns. I have shared these concerns with the current Period team, who are now aware of these conversations. Period is now able to send products to anyone who needs it, as our growing inventory allows, and even cover shipping costs for other organizations and service providers not currently in our network. Period has grown into an organization with a steady supply of products to give away daily and a steady source of resources to cover shipping for other organizations too. I humbly apologize for ever causing experiences of suppression, and I recognize that I personally have more work to do to ensure this never happens again. I am thankful for our collaborations over the last several years, and I really hope to collaborate more in the future. On my own history, I want to share that I was inspired and am continuously inspired to do this work because I am reminded of my privilege. I started this work because when my family was experiencing housing instability, I heard stories of period poverty from women who were in much worse living situations than I was in, and I realized I had never thought about period poverty because I had never personally experienced it. It was a privilege check for me at a time I needed it, and that inspired me to feel an urgency to take action. I try to reflect on my growing privilege and an inherent privilege as an Asian American every day, and that's a big part of what pushes me to dedicate myself to this work. If you have any further questions, please feel free to reach out. Hope you are all well and safe. The people that initially pointed out her bad behavior to begin with did not accept this, and I fully understand why. That apology was calculated. Chelsea Von Chaz said, I still call bullshit. Point is, you were thinking about yourself and not the folks in need, not the people looking to make a change. The network chapter model for charities was around well before your company. The model isn't exclusive to you. Make this right by highlighting the Black organizations and charities that you did wrong. Instead of asking folks to dissolve and join you like a monopoly, uplift them. I've helped dozens of organizations to get started. You think I give a fuck about them copying my ideas to help more folks? Nah, I'm for the people. Apologize and stop plagiarizing the work of Period Equity. Your organization and business is a reflection of you, so if you're lying and cheating, your staff and ambassadors are doing the same. Nadya responded by saying, I hear you and I am trying to understand as much as I can to ensure this never happens again. I see that my past actions have made other organizers in this space feel muted or silenced by me, and deeply and humbly apologize. Ileri herself responded by saying, it's so disheartening how Madam Menarch, that's Chelsea Von Chaz's a Black woman, had to teach you how to give a proper apology given the violence and exploitation you have committed against Black women and women of color. Crazy to me how Black women are still the ones that have to push you to grow as a leader and teach you how to critically think. You would have never changed if you weren't publicly called out, meaning that what you really care about here is your reputation. I think that all of that is true, especially given the amount of plagiarism. Because of this, more than 50 of Period's 750 chapters chapters decided to disband from Period. Period conducted an internal audit. They said that they were revisiting all of their programs to ensure that they were working collaboratively. In response to what happened, Period put out a few posts on their Instagram saying, over the past few weeks, we have had hard conversations and exchanges with members of the Period community and the larger menstrual movement about our place in the menstrual activist movement. Many of these conversations grew out of concern voiced by fellow leaders who are asking that both Period and our founder, Nadya Okamoto, hold ourselves accountable for previous actions that perpetuated harmful power dynamics between Black-led menstrual movement groups and our national organization. While we never intentionally worked to silence the voices of fellow activists, we realized that our communication, specifically around chapter recruitment with fellow organizations, was ineffective and non-inclusive. We are here to tell you, we see you and we hear you, and we may not always get it right, but we know these are the conversations that need to be had. We also affirm your concerns because they are both relevant and important, especially as young activists and social justice organizations around the country, including Period, are demanding more. We want to clearly state that Period strives to be an anti-racist organization. Every day we work to call out inequities when we see them. Together we have spent years building an organization and movement that seeks to be reflective of the communities and menstruators we serve. We have built meaningful partnerships and relationships with Black leaders and Black-led organizations to have significantly enriched our organization in so many impactful ways. To be clear, we do not require partners to be Period chapters, nor do we withhold product resources from partner organizations. We fully recognize that we, both Period and our founder Nadya, are a powerful voice in the menstrual movement. With that power comes privilege and great responsibility. Did they really have to pull a Spider-Man right there? In the past year, as Period has seen tremendous growth, we have taken steps to better manage our programs and communication, including the hiring of new executive director. As an organization with over 850 chapters registered around the world, we do not take our place in the menstrual movement lightly, and we must be held to a higher standard. We are also an organization run mostly by feminist women, many of whom are white and are part of the dominant culture. This is the same dominant culture that has perpetuated structural racism and oppression that has led us to this moment of reckoning in our country. In this moment, our movement needs to commit to structural changes that are going to have a direct and immediate impact on the racial justice movement. In this spirit, our commitments to you are as follows. Period will execute an internal audit of our programs, chapter recruitment, communications, digital content, and organizational policies through the lens of inclusion, and make large and small changes to better represent those most affected by Period poverty. Cultivate and maintain partnerships with Black-led organizations and nonprofits, Black-owned businesses, and more that go beyond a service relationship and advance their entrepreneurial spirit and success. Whenever possible, purchase products and services from BIPOC-owned businesses in our day-to-day expenses. Ensure that research surrounding Period poverty is inclusive of all populations with a lens on BIPOC menstruators. If research is lacking or inadequate, Period will work to find funding and support for these studies. Actively develop and promote diversity in our hiring processes and in recruitment on the board of directors. Include chapter members, partners, donors, and sponsors in BIPOC activism and inclusion, conversation, and trainings. They posted again like 2 days later saying, to our invaluable partners in the menstrual justice community, Period is committed to restorative justice and holding ourselves to account. Period sincerely apologizes for any and all harm created by our organization since we began in 2014. And then days later they posted another apology and said that their aim was to present substantial changes by August 30th, 2020, and that was from Period's board of directors. On September 13th of 2020, they posted Period's independent review phase 1 report, which was conducted by something called Dragonfly Partners. I don't know what that is. It says, as of August 31st, Dragonfly Partners has completed a review of Period's history, review of documents, yada yada. It lists that Period made some mistakes and that there, should be next steps, and that Dragonfly Partners offered some preliminary recommendations to Period's leadership. Jennifer Weiss-Wolf, again, the author of Period's Gone Public, responded to this post saying, hey folks, you weren't given access to my ideas. They were published in my book and in public op-eds, and your organization lifted them verbatim. Among the incidents, last year at Refinery 29's room, your branded display with 7th Generation featured placards with language and ideas lifted directly, word for word, from my work without permission or attribution. Carelessness isn't the issue. This is plagiarism. Call it what it is. Is that the example you seek to set for the students in your network? And I don't see that Period ever replied. The next thing that I found, which is sort of the last thing I have to talk about, because there hasn't really been that I found. If there is, please let me know any updates since this. The last thing I found on this, the most recent thing, was that About 6 months after all of this went down, Nadya did an interview with this person who works for BuzzFeed, I think BuzzFeed, and has her own YouTube channel. She called what happened, she did this video with Nadya and she called what happened to her cancel culture, which was really upsetting. I was hoping it was just clickbait, but it was not. I wish that Nadya would have set the record straight and said, what happened to me was I wasn't canceled, I was called out for plagiarism and for stealing work, particularly work from Black women, and for misrepresenting my homelessness in order to get ahead. It was the most odd video I'd ever watched because Nadya sort of blamed what happened to her on trying to be a model minority, which is a thing, but also is not an excuse. She said that what happened was she didn't realize that she was actually working to uphold white supremacy when she did all this. And like, yeah, but also you're not really sorry. Like, you're sorry you got caught. She said she was working with people. She wouldn't specify what that meant, but she was working with people on this. She said that made her extremely depressed, what happened to her. And overall, there was just a lack of actually saying what she did and being accountable for it. And calling it cancel culture was so shitty because clearly you are not canceled. She said she went into an inpatient program. It's just like, this is so weird. Like, you did something so shitty and you kind of got away with it until you didn't, and now people just don't like you. That's not cancel culture. You were not canceled. You're not a television show. You treated people shitty and there were consequences. Anyway, that's what happened with the author of Period Power, Nadya Okamoto. I hope that you all will support the work being done by Ileri Jaiyeoba and Chelsea Van Chaz, the women who were plagiarized. And also, if you're interested, go check out Jennifer Weiss-Wolf's book. All the information is linked down below. Leave your questions or comments, like, subscribe, and I will see you next time. Thanks for watching. Bye!